Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Qualified Immunity, a podcast from two individuals with years of experience inside the legal system. My name is Greg Engel. Spent the last 9.5 years in a law enforcement capacity in the middle of the country, working for multiple agencies at multiple different levels. My co-host, his name is Lucas Cohen, and he's currently a third-year law student who has also ran for office twice. And one day will help defend the sanity of America, known as the legal system. Lucas, say hi to the people.
Hey, everybody.
Today, we are going to we did part one earlier. Now we're going to do part two. And with that being said, I want to make it evidently clear before we start this. This is your trigger warning. This episode is going to be in depth. This episode is going to be graphic. This episode is going to not hold any bars. Because what we're talking about has been held back for too long. What we're talking about and what has to be talked about and what needs to be talked about is the fact that there is a child sex obsession epidemic in America. It has infiltrated our cultural groups. It has infiltrated our social groups. It has infiltrated our spiritual groups. It has infiltrated every level of society that we know, and according to some people, even some of the highest members of society. Recently, there was a Jeffrey Epstein case. Unfortunately, Jeffrey Epstein met his untimely end due to, suicide. So, before we get into this is going to be raw and this is going to be real, and this is not going to be something you should listen to around your children. And for any victims of sexual abuse or sexual assault or human trafficking, I want a fair warning disclaimer. I do not want this episode in any way, shape, or form to trigger any memories, any PTSD, anything that could possibly be emotional, spiritually, physically, or mentally harming. Therefore, if you believe even in the slightest that it might, skip this episode. Because as much as podcasts rely on listens and subscriptions and likes, and as much as I want this on Facebook and YouTube to go viral and reach the masses, I do not want to harm anybody in the process of doing it. With that being said, we're going to start. In 2019 alone, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children received more than 20,000 reports of suspected online enticement and unwanted explicit material sent to a child. The year before, the Pew Research Center found that almost a third of girls ages 15 to 17 had said they'd received unwanted explicit images online. This is an article from Good Morning America. Salone Ryan, who uses a pseudonym to protect her privacy, leads the special projects team at BARC, a monitoring service that alerts parents when kids might be in danger online. BARC also offers content monitoring and web filtering services to schools. In this article, she gives a behind-the-scenes look into the harrowing work of posing as an underage girl to discover possible sexual predators who abuse minors, turning the evidence over to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and law enforcement. She also shares what parents should know to keep their child safe. I'm going to preface it with this. I've done this. I still have 4 or 5 accounts on another phone where I think 3 of them I'm a teenage girl and 2 of them I'm a teenage boy, and they are backstop behind backstop behind backstop behind backstop.
So when you say backstop, what do you mean?
I mean, they are legitimately, they're believable.
Okay.
They're, of course, That being said, although I'm currently not using them, I'm not going to tell you what they are.
Right.
I'm not going to tell anybody what they are. My own wife doesn't know what they are.
Right.
But they are 100% believable with 100% real pictures of a person that is still currently under the age of 18.
Right.
They're not explicit pictures.
Right.
They're normal pictures that you would find anywhere on a high schooler's Instagram or Facebook or any social media. Because I knew somebody at the time that was like, sure, dude, hey, can I use your, pictures? You live 100 miles, 200 miles from where I'm going to do this at. Can I use your pictures? They're like, sure. So I have multiple accounts from when I did this. The problem becomes, even with that much in depth, I still, based off those counts, have never had one prosecuted.
Okay, so you haven't had any prosecuted. How many?
Hundreds.
Okay.
From across the country. Hundreds. Because I know what predators look for.
Okay, so hundreds across the country. How many of those were actually willing to meet?
Most of them. Most of them. There was one that was going to drive from Santa Maria, California.
Holy cow. All the way to Oklahoma.
Yes.
That's scary. I mean, that's a lot of drive to actually do that.
Well, and of course there's backstops in their stories to this, but I'm not afraid of sharing this because it's the same stories that are going to get used 100 times, real or fake, no matter what. Of, my mom pissed me off and I want to go find, I live in BFE, Oklahoma, and I want to go see the world, and I want to have an older boyfriend or an older girlfriend. Right. And I'll tell you this, the honest to God truth, the amount of women that will pick on minor boys, it's not equal, but it's just as scary.
And that's what you never hear about.
No, you never hear about that. You always hear about the 25-year-old or 45-year-old grandpa-looking guy who lives in his mom's basement his entire life and wants to go pick up the 13, 14-year-old girl across the country, yada, yada, yada. You never hear about the high school teacher in California that wants to go pick up a boy and rescue him and move him to the Golden State.
Well, I will say this. There seems to be a lot of women teachers who end up in trouble because they were active with their students or planning to be active with their students.
And that goes to a whole nother philosophical argument of, if the student's 18 and the teacher's 22 and just graduated college,
right?
But the problem is they have authority,
right?
I mean, in Oklahoma, the same statute that enforces that, it's the same one that enforces police rape.
Right.
It doesn't matter the age at that point; it matters the influence or authority.
Right, and morally speaking, not talking about law or legal systems. If you're in a position of authority, like a teacher or even like college professors, you shouldn't be sleeping with your students.
No, I agree. Just off of fact of perceived moral,
right,
or perceived conflict of interest. How's that?
Well, the authority, the doctrine is in loco parentis.
Yeah,
I mean, you're in the position of authority in a high school, specifically as a parent.
Yeah.
So there's obvious problems with that.
Well, this has been a problem for a long time, but in the last 10 to 15 years, with the advent of iPhones, iPads, smartphones, tech in your pocket, that made it worse.
Right.
You stacked social media on top of it, and it was 100-fold worse. Because
right.
I'm sorry, and I'm going to get some backlash from this eventually somewhere, but most parents have no idea what their kids are doing on social media.
Yeah.
No idea.
I mean, I don't think mine did.
No idea. And even if they do, well, I have apps that track that. Yeah, and your 17-year-old knows how to out.
Yeah.
Like, it's like at the end of every show where I'm like, hey, follow me on social media. And it's like, how many apps do I have to name?
A lot.
A lot. And I don't have all of them.
Yeah.
Like, there's a bunch of apps that I don't have. Listen, baby, all I want you to do is lift up your shirt, running your hand across your stomach. Can you do that for me? My 37-year-old self would gladly tell this person in my Instagram DMs where to go and how fast to get there, but I'm currently playing the role of an 11-year-old sixth grader who is being swiftly and methodically groomed by an online predator. Sometimes these messages start out innocently enough. Predators might say they're talent scouts or photographers or even 12-year-old girls looking to be friends with my persona. But then it's suddenly all too clear that their goal is sexual grooming, which is we could do a 9-part series on. They want to fulfill their own sexual desires via video chat, or they want to collect child sex abuse material referred to quickly as child pornography, but pornography can only imply consent to trade or sell to other people. Or maybe they want to rope her into a sadomasochistic relationship or meet up to abuse her in person and even traffic her. While these messages still horrify me every time I get them at Bark, the tech company where I work, we see them sent to actual kids all the time. This project is a natural extension of the work our company does on a daily basis to keep these kids safe by monitoring their online activity for potential dangers like cyberbullying, suicidal ideation, self-harm, and sexual predation. Although my personas for this project may be fictitious, the kids who are being contacted by predators every day at this very moment aren't. And Bark does the difficult work to help parents and schools understand the terrifying reality they may face. My personas have ranged in age, socioeconomic status, family dynamics, racial background, and hair color, but the abuses they experience online are always largely the same. They are all inevitably met with a barrage of perverse requests, horrific messages, and graphic images. While it's my face and body that are manipulated with the help of dynamic graphic design team to become these personas, there are several of us on Bark's special project team, which was created to dedicate time and resources to this work, seeking to uncover predators. We create fictitious tweens and teens, build out our backstories, field incoming messages, communicate in each persona's voice, and identify potential perpetrators. This work is undoubtedly taxing. We spend hours in Bark's Atlantis office working on this project, and then at the end of the day, we all head home to our families. I pull off the kids' clothes I wore for images and video calls with perpetrators and change back into clothes more appropriate for a 37-year-old. I turn off my work phone, I drive home, I kiss my kids goodnight, and then I turn my phone back on so I can work a little more. The truth is, a lot of these perpetrators have the same schedule I do. They go to work, come home, have dinner with their families, help their kids with homework, tuck them into bed, and then log onto social media to find a child with whom to communicate. Sometimes that child is me, an adult collecting evidence, but much more often than not, these perpetrators are sexually and psychologically abusing children without ever being in the same room as them. In some instances, conversations are such as, "Are you a happy, pretty girl?" can escalate to a barrage of messages from someone claiming to be 26-year-old texting, "You owe me more," who requests revealing pictures. Within as few as 30 minutes, they may already be using controlling language and behavior and possibly laying the groundwork for my persona to potentially become his next victim. It's hard to stomach the fact that there are so many dangers like this online, and it's easy to feel overwhelmed and powerless against it. We're the first generation of parents to raise kids in the age of smartphones. I love that technology affords us access to knowledge and experience, but the ability to keep in touch with loved ones. But the same avenues are also being used to abuse children. "80% of abuse right now is never going to happen in person." The problem is, out of the 80%, out of the 20% that's going to happen in person, 90% of that 20% will end up trafficked.
Say those numbers again.
Out of the 20% that will end up happening in person, 90% of that 20% will end up being a trafficking victim.
Okay.
Because this is the thing nobody else wants to talk about. A lot of former entrepreneurs in the narcotics industries are switching products. Once you do a pound of blow, it's gone.
Right.
Once you sell a kilo, it's gone. And there's a lot of multinational, diverse operations that I would almost damn near call corporations. Most people call them cartels that are switching products. Because that 12, 13, 14-year-old they pick off the street that's pissed at mom and grew up broke, they're going to flash her a little bit of money. They're going to get her in the car, and they're going to use her and abuse her, and guess what? After one use, it's not gone. So now you have a problem. How do you go after it? Because what people don't want to admit, and what people especially don't want to talk about, is the fact that sex sells.
Yeah. I mean, we use it in commercials all the time.
Disney uses it in commercials all the time.
Yeah, actually.
Disney uses it. Go watch a Disney commercial and come back and tell me that sex doesn't sell. You want to start talking about some of the most iconic figures of the last 10 years? A lot of them came out of Disney.
Yeah.
And the number one I think about, and she's basically the same age I am, is Selena Gomez. I think she's like a year younger than me.
Yeah.
And at one point a couple of years ago, granted not totally true at this moment in time, but a couple of years ago was a wholehearted sex symbol of society.
Yeah.
Taylor Swift. Selena Gomez. Oh crap, what's her name? She's OD'd on heroin like 3 or 4 times. She's got one of the most amazing voices ever. Oh, I can't think of her name. I can see her. Demi Lovato.
Oh, yeah.
Where'd she start at? Disney. So we have an issue in this country where we want to look up and we're like, oh, it's okay. It's okay. My child will never do that. You don't know if they're doing it or not. You have no idea what's going on in your child's life. Because there's 2 personas, just as there is in most people. There's the one they have online, and there's the real one. I try and blur that and be the same person. I mean, you see me basically every day. Do I change any?
Not much.
It's like outside if I put headphones on and I pick a pump up song every day.
Yeah.
The problem becomes we live in a society where not only have we glorified sex to an astronomically amazing, ridiculous level, but we're also sexualizing our kids younger than ever.
I'd never really thought about that.
You're sexualizing kids so much younger than it's ever been done before. Ever.
I never thought about that before. If you go back and look at movies from like the 60s and 70s, it's a bunch of 45-year-old men.
Exactly.
And roughly the same age of women.
What is it now? 20?
Early 20s.
Early 20s on a good day?
Yeah.
I mean, I've been told, you and I both talked about it. I'd love to go act.
Yeah.
By the time I got to the point in my life where I could go to cold calls, and I could go to auditions, and I could go do this, and I could go do that, I had a lot of people tell me I was too old.
Yeah.
The thing that saved me at the time was I didn't have a beard.
Right.
So I could play way younger.
Right. Well, shows that were popular when you and I were kids, they had like 20-year-olds playing 16-year-olds.
Oh, yeah.
But those shows were very, I don't know what word to use. I mean, they were very sexually minded most of the time.
Yeah. And this goes back to the whole, well, once you're an adult, go listen to a Disney movie. And you start seeing some inside jokes.
Yeah.
In Disney movies that you're like, what in the hell is that?
Yeah.
The kids don't get it.
Yeah.
The problem is, and this could dive down a rabbit hole 9 times long, but are you subconsciously sexualizing children? I mean, one of my best friends in the entire world has a 13-year-old who knew what "that's what she said" jokes before, like, learned it somewhere else.
Yeah.
So at what point do you end up being like, holy crap, at 13 they know what "that's what she said," and 99% of "that's what she said" jokes are not appropriate for children.
No. Well, certainly not for 13-year-olds.
But we've wholeheartedly over-sexualized society.
Yeah.
And some people will say we won't, because some people will go back and say, look at the ancient Greeks. And look at the Romans. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to be said there. I don't think the Greeks were this bad.
I don't think there's ever been a time in America, or excuse me, I don't think there's ever been a time in the history of the world where children were abused as they are today.
I don't know. I mean, you could get pretty close, but it's uncommon, and usually it's not a good sign for the society.
No, it's not, because we could go a lot deeper than that, but there's multiple, and I'm not going to go into every single one I found earlier because we'd be here all night. But there's multiple conversations that happen every day between adults and tweens and teens asking for sexually explicit material. Thousands. And we go back to what we said in part 1, which at this point might be a Facebook and YouTube only video because my computer's too old to try and upload it. But 1 to 4%. We're talking about 1 to 4% of America are pedophiles. Does that not scare the hell out of you? And you don't even have kids yet.
Yeah, I don't have kids.
But what do we do? Because I can go literally show you story after story after story after story after story. And the crazy part is, I thought about this the other day. I know multiple trafficking victims. I know multiple people who have been sexually assaulted as minors. That makes me curious as to how many would be willing to tell their story. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it depends on how public it is, probably. I mean...
Oh, yeah, because there's a whole bunch of people in the trafficking database that that's not their real name. There's no there's no contact order. There's a lot. But I can't stop this. I mean, I don't know if I said it on air or off air. This is my one goal. Stop abusing kids. Now, do I ever condone violence? No, I do not. But if somebody ever touches my daughter or my son, God help their soul. Because I spent the first, 12 years of my adult life learning how to be efficient and violent at the same time. You don't touch my kids. Not now, not ever, not. If anybody touches your kids, if anybody touches any of my friends' kids, period. Like, one of the scariest things in my entire world right now is realizing that one of my very, very, very best friends for more than a decade now has a 13-year-old. And that was the same girl that I was throwing in the air at 3. That I'm doing the same thing with my daughter that I did with her 10 years ago. And I look up, I'm like, oh my God, you're 13. You have a smartphone. But there's no stopping it. There's no stopping time. There's no stopping age. And everybody makes a joke of, oh, wait till your first boyfriend comes over. We'll get the shotguns out. I'm not worried about her first boyfriend. I'm worried about her first DM on Instagram.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about the kid that you can smile and scare him. I'm worried about what happens when you get on Reddit or Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok or pick one. Because these people are everywhere. They're not just going to stay at one app. And the flip side of that is they're not just staying there. Everybody's like, oh, we caught one. You caught one. You lost 100. You caught one because one was dumb enough to leave his IP address on. I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
You catch one of them because one of them was stupid enough to not use a VPN, to not do this, to not do that. And it's the bad part of like, well, you're giving away all the secrets. Guys, 99 of these guys are already using VPNs anyway. And if you're not using a VPN on your own phone, you're crazy. I'm sorry, you are. But you go to backtrace an IP address, and what do you get? Germany, Ireland, England, Nebraska, and the guy's probably sitting in New Hampshire somewhere.
Yeah.
This is the problem of trafficking. And as much as everybody's like, well, they took Backpage down, that should stop it. The biggest... And there's a lot of conspiracies about this. The biggest harm to local enforcement of trafficking, and I would say even up to a state and federal level of trafficking, was when the feds took down Backpage. Because on Backpage, you could track an image from city to city to city to city to city.
Right.
Now it's gone. See what I mean?
Yeah.
They all went to one spot. Now you can't do that anymore because the feds took it down because they were trafficking people. No shit, Sherlock. And what do you think law enforcement was using to track these girls?
Well, it's enough to make me wonder if the authorities are actually interested in pursuing this or even allowing it to be pursued.
I think at a human level they are, but at an administrative level, are they? I don't know.
I mean, if they are, they aren't showing it very well.
I want to say they are. I want to hope they are. But it's like I said earlier, you can't make money off trafficking victims.
Right. Well, not pursuing it is one thing. Making it difficult to pursue is something else. Does that make sense?
No, that's 100% makes sense.
And that may just be incompetence. I mean, it might not be intentional. It may just be that they aren't thinking about what they're doing.
I can see that. I can see the entire argument behind that.
I mean, nobody ever said our federal government was competent.
But it's beyond the feds. It's local. Like,
yeah. I
have an entire book written up. An entire book for a task force. I called it the HEAT Task Force, the Human Exploitation and Trafficking Task Force. I couldn't get the time of day with a sheriff 2 years ago in any major metro. Like, I had it down to the dollar amounts it would take. The tech it would take, the dollar amounts it would take, the manpower it would take, had it down.
Right.
I couldn't get the time of day with any admin, any sheriff, any agency head big enough to do it. And I had it all set up. Like, I still have the binder because it was in my office when the house got on fire. And it is literally a 3-ring binder that is full. Like, you cannot add add a page. I had it all down. Perfect to the T, including UC ops, tech ops, everything it would need to eradicate trafficking and sex victims in a major metropolitan area, and I couldn't get the time of day with anybody. Somebody comes up with the same thing for narcotics trafficking, even still in Oklahoma still, where it's a misdemeanor for possession.
There probably already is one.
Ish. Not really. I mean, we technically have a human trafficking task force in Oklahoma, but when the budget cuts happened, it magically disappeared. So do we really want to stop this? I don't know. We've talked about this before. Is there a way to stop this privately? Yeah. You know the money it would take? Seriously. I thought about it. You know the money the task force would take that I came up with?
How much?
$15 million just to start it. I mean, you're talking about vehicles and like you can have. There's a lot. There's a lot to trafficking. There's a lot to sex crimes, and part of that is you're going to have people willing to go in.
Yeah.
With the whole idea that the people on the inside know there's going to be people after them. The auctions, like we talked about, take the movie Taken earlier. The auctions, those are real things.
Well,
those happen right here.
You had them online on Wayfair.
There's in-person auctions too.
Yeah, I get that.
That have happened.
Yeah.
In probably buildings you've driven by.
I believe that.
Because I had almost pinpointed one at one point. Because you get 3 different cell phones of 3 different IP addresses of people who are all talking to the same account that just happen to go to the same place.
Right.
So could we do it privately? 100%. Would I do it privately? 100%. It's going to take $15 million to start it. At least.
Right.
And probably another...
And that's just getting started. That's not operating.
Operating cost after that is probably 1 to 2.5 a year. There's a lot of fuel. There's a lot of buy-in. There's a lot of... Because if you want to show up to an undercover buy and you're wearing a $12 suit and everybody else is wearing Armani... If you look like you just stepped out of name a famous cop show, NYPD Blue,
yeah,
which was an awful cop show. But if you show up looking like one, and you're shit backstopped, like you're not making the first actual contact and first actual thing for 5 years. Guarantee it. So you have a $15 million startup. Go high and say you've got 2.5 a year. I mean, you need $30 million to do it privately.
Right.
So how do you stop this? I don't know. I really don't know. Because I can tell you, I have seen statistic after statistic after statistic of boys and girls between this age and this age are contacted this many times, and 1 in 3 girls before they turn 18 are sexually assaulted, and 1 in 6 are raped, and 90% of the time it's by somebody, 80 to 90% of the time it's by somebody they know, or somebody that is close to them, or it's a church person, or Boy Scouts, or it's a social group, or whatever you want to say. The statistics are there. People are raping and molesting kids daily. And what's it take to stop it? $28 million. And 5 years. Mind you, 5 years where there are still going to be kids that are going to get raped. And you know what they do when they gripe about it? They get them high. You know what they do when they gripe too much about it? They kill them and throw them in the ocean. Or worse, there are people that are having kids just for their own sexual pleasure.
Yeah.
Because people attract people. Like minds attract like minds. Pedophile families attract pedophiles attract other pedophiles. Well, if you get a guy and a girl who have attracted to somebody just like them, and all of a sudden they get married, and all of a sudden they have kids. They're having kids every 2 years or every 3 years. And I'm going to get some pushback. I'm going to hear, oh, that doesn't happen. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. There's a couple couples I could go point out and be like, hey, this is suspicious. You should probably look into this. But they have enough wealth and they have enough money and they've got enough power. Nobody's ever going to do it.
Yeah.
We're not even talking about in Mayberry or suburbs. I'm talking about people I can find on Twitter that I'm like, I know what that means. I've seen this before. Yeah. I know what that emoji means. And oh my God, guess what? You have kids every 2 to 3 years. Huh.
That's convenient.
That's convenient. It's almost like you can just produce your own victims. And you're an authority figure in the household, so guess what's going to happen? They're never going to speak out. Ever. Or at least 99% of the time. Meanwhile, you've got sick fuck George over here sitting in his basement trying to sex this 13-year-old across the country. And that's the thing. 20 years ago, pedophiles had to meet in person. Yeah. They had to groom in person. Yeah. They had to do it all in person. Now they're getting nudes across the country from a 13 to 6, or fuck, an 8 to 17-year-old. And not only they're using it for their personal satisfaction, go jerk off to. You know what else they're using it for? Income. There's an entire dark economy, for child sexualized images. They don't have to be nude. There's an entire economy for children who have been sexualized, both genders. I'm sorry, all genders. Doesn't matter, period. So not only are they getting off on this from thousands of miles away and taking advantage of some poor person, poor minor, poor girl, poor little boy, but then they turn around, they go to Tor, they go to the dark web, they go somewhere, or they might even have their own little cliques. And a lot of times they do. You go to bigger metros, they have meetups and group me's and they have ways to do it. And all of a sudden, you're looking around, you're like, so what do you got? Hey, you got any new stuff? So not only are they predatorizing children and using it for sexual gratification, on top of that, they use it for income. They use it as a currency. America, you need to wake the fuck up because your children are being used as sexual currency. But it's only 1 to 4%. We don't need to worry about it. We need to stop drugs. We need to put people in prison for using methamphetamine. Meanwhile, we're going to prescribe and just call it Adderall. But we can't get the time of day or the funding or anybody to pay attention long enough to try and stop trafficking and trying to stop predators and trying to stop people from, mentally, emotionally, and sexually abusing children across the country. And there's some groups that are trying. It's like the one I just read about. There's groups that are trying. But they don't have any arrest authority. And we turned it over to law enforcement. Law enforcement like, okay, great, thanks. We'll look into it. Wake up. Jesus, wake up. At what point do we value our children enough to spend more time and more money protecting them from being sexually, emotionally, and physically abused than we do for stopping people from using drugs? Seriously. Nixon did the war on drugs. I've never seen the war on child or sex trafficking. I've never seen the war on pedophilia. I've never seen the war on, hey, let's protect our fucking kids. Have you?
No, and I'm a lot more worried about one than the other.
But by God, we have to stop people from smoking weed, Jeff Sessions. Like, the man was the most powerful and technically the chief law enforcement officer in the entire country. I can't find anything he ever did that had anything to do with pedophilia or trafficking. Period. But holy shit, we can't legalize marijuana. This is the world we live in. This is the world we've accepted. And it's bullshit. 100% bullshit. I will not spend the rest of my life looking around going, oh, well, we need to make that illegal because I don't like it. You shouldn't like kids getting raped either. You shouldn't like people getting nudes of children either. But I don't see Karen and Dylan running around saying something about it. Do you?
Well, no, because upper middle class and wealthy Americans don't have to deal with it as much. Because they live...
No. They ignore it.
Well, they ignore it, but they don't have to worry about their kids doing it as much,
no,
I don't think.
Yes, they do.
You think so?
100%. Bratty Brittany at 13, and Bratty Brittany at 16 when Daddy didn't buy her a G-Wagon.
But their kids aren't getting trafficked.
They do.
They do?
Yes.
So why aren't they doing anything about it?
They make it GoFundMe. Joel, she just ran away. She must be at the mountain, the lake house. I'm telling you this. Sex trafficking and human trafficking and pedophilia does not have boundaries when it comes to socioeconomic status, period.
So it actually is a universal problem.
It's a universal problem. I have seen children of millionaires get approached and try to get groomed, and I've seen poor people try to get groomed. It doesn't matter. It's literally a universal problem. It's literally a universal problem.
And we can't get anything done about it.
No. The federal level's trying to do something. Like, they have a decent amount of money behind their programs, but the the actual law enforcement capacity at a federal level is so small, personnel-wise, and on top of that, they're going to go after the biggest and the baddest, and they're going to try and get the cartels shipping people from somewhere else.
Right.
The federal human trafficking policy is a whole hell of a lot like our foreign policy. Fuck the people that live here. What's outside of it?
Yeah. Heaven forbid we actually protect our own citizens.
Heaven forbid we actually, watch our infrastructure, but let's go start a war. It's just like Iraq, guys. Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. But by God, we invaded it and bombed the shit out of it. And guess what? It's worse now than it was 20 years ago. There's not a whole lot of argument in that. And we cannot wrap ourselves around the fact that it's just like stimulus packages, man. And I'm not saying I'm against the stimulus package, but I hear everybody out here screaming, oh my God, stimulus, corona, corona, corona. You should be that pissed off that kids are getting approached every day for sex. Or at least sexualized images. How many times does it have to take before America or the world as a whole gets serious about stopping trafficking and gets serious about stopping sexual predators? And they get serious. I swear to God, if America or the world had half the amount of time and effort spent into stopping trafficking and pedophilia as they spent trying to stop the drug war, we would have an entirely different society. Would we not?
Yeah, because we spent a lot of money on drugs.
How many billions of dollars did we spend on the drug war? Billions, if not trillions of dollars did we spend on the drug war. And then look at how much we spent on trafficking. Look at how many. The problem is we proactively went out to try and stop the drug war. You know what we do proactively? Try to stop pedophilia. We don't proactively try and stop sex trafficking. We don't proactively try and stop human trafficking. We don't proactively try and stop labor trafficking. We look up and when somebody comes and says, oh, yeah, okay, we'll do something, we become reactive about it. But by God, we can't have a reactive police force because holy shit, if Karen drives down the road or Shaquan drives down the road without a tag light, we got to write that ticket and arrest him for the weed in the center console. Are you fucking kidding? Is there systematic racism in law enforcement and the legal system? Yes. Because it is wholeheartedly slanted against poverty. And the one universal problem that we all have that affects people equally across the socioeconomic status is pedophilia and sex trafficking. And you know how much time we can dedicate to that? Not a goddamn bit. It is 1/10 of what the rest of law enforcement gets. Well, we're trying. We're trying. No, you're not. You're not trying hard enough. I've seen it firsthand. It ain't being tried hard enough.
Do you want the numbers?
Yeah.
So the war on drugs since 1971 has cost the U.S. over $1 trillion, averaging about $9 million a day. I just pulled up Justice Department invests more than $47 million to combat human trafficking and assist victims. That's this year, I guess.
Did you say 47 million?
47 million, which is a joke, an absolute joke. If you're talking about the federal budget, that is a joke.
What is 47 million percentage-wise of the federal budget?
Well, what's the federal budget this year?
19 trillion. I mean, that's not an actual number, but it wouldn't surprise me if I wasn't far off.
I don't know. I don't even want to do this math. This is just going to be depressing.
It's less than, I guarantee it's less than 1.
It's less than 1%.
It's less than 1/4 of 1%. I bet it's less than 1/4 of 1%. I bet less money. 0.25, 0.25. I bet it's around there. But we're not supposed to talk about it. It's not a problem, remember? What is it?
It's a lot of zeros. I don't know. I don't know. That's like 12 zeros, I think. I don't know.
We spend less money. This is what's wrong with our country. Right here. You want the perfect example? What did you say the war on drugs was? $1 million a day? $9 million a day? So the war on drugs spends $9 million a day. So in a week, in a single week, the war on drugs, which is totally pointless, spends more money than human trafficking is allocated. Than is allocated to stop human trafficking. Welcome to 2020. Welcome to the United States, and welcome to the entire reason the legal system is fucked.
Very roughly speaking, that's 3.5 billion a year for drugs.
Do you know what I could do with $3.5 billion to stop trafficking? My God.
Put a big dent in actually stopping human trafficking?
I could remove 80% of it in the United States in a year.
Well, this is why I ask. Are they actually not just interested in pursuing, are they actually interested in not halting the pursuit of?
$45 million a year. Does that answer your question? They're just saying $45 million a year. Does that answer your question? Because you know most state programs that to enforce something come from what?
Yeah.
Federal money. So Does the government care about human trafficking victims? No. Does the government care about sex trafficking? No. Does the government care about labor trafficking? No. Does the government care about stopping pedophiles from sexually, emotionally, and physically and spiritually ruining children for the rest of their lives? No, they don't. Because in 1 week, they're more concerned about stopping people from smoking weed in 1 week than they are stopping 12-year-olds from sending nudes to predators who use them. And this is the point where I said this is going to get real graphic. They care more about stopping weed than they do about stopping the predator from getting a nude of a 12-year-old to go masturbate to it before he sells it to his friends who are going to go masturbate to it. Got the picture yet? Tell me something good.
$47 million in grants.
47 million in grants. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. I'm out of things to say. I'm legitimately out of things to say. We might do a part 3 on this too. It's not going to be soon, but what?
It's estimated that human trafficking generates $150 billion a year.
Easy.
I think that's on the low side.
I've seen closer estimates that it's closer to $500 billion. Worldwide? Or in the United States?
I don't know.
It's like, worldwide, it's closer to $500 billion. Okay. We're running up on our time limit, so we're going to do like, I wish the camera could see the look on your face right now. Like, you're dumbfounded. Like, and I'm not going to say you didn't believe me, but I'm like, I'm telling you, I've lived this life. There's no money. Like, you want to stop weed from getting smoked in Okarche, Oklahoma? That's the last time I saw a DEA bust. The DEA busted a guy in Okarche. I'm not sure if it made the news or not. In a town of like 5,000 people, if that. No, did it make the news?
The fiscal year 2019 budget for DCFA. Fiscal year 2019 budget request for all DEA resources totals $2,800 million. So $2.8 billion.
This stopped the drug war. You know what I could do in human trafficking for $2.8 billion?
Well, this is just for 1 year.
That's 1 year. I know. You know what I could do from 1 year for? So somebody else figured it out. The amount of the federal budget that goes to human trafficking is 0.0012%. It's less than 1%.
Yeah.
It's less than 0.1% to stop pedophilia, sex trafficking.
I suck at math, by the way.
I know.
Okay. That's why I'm in law school. Law students don't do math.
I know. That's why I didn't go to law school. Right? I know what listing is.
My favorite part about law school is when the test comes up and there's a part about calculating damages, and I look around the room and people are freaking out. And it is multiplication. Simple multiplication.
Multiplication?
Yeah.
Multiplication?
Yeah. Multiplying.
I know, but the first time, like, it's simple multiplication. This is why he's in law school. Lucas, tell people where they can follow you.
I am on the Twitter at the Lucas Cohen, spelled with a C, not with a K.
Anywhere else? Oh, yeah, that's right. You got banned from Facebook.
I'm on Keybase.
Oh, God. Keybase. Nobody cares about Keybase.
I know, that's why I love it.
Oh.
I also have a Snapchat account, but
Oh,
don't expect
I
to get in
don't
touch
wanna know.
with me now.
Never mind. Don't want to know. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn, at Greg J. Engel, Jerry G. J. I-N-G-L-E. Follow us both. Oh, like and subscribe to this podcast. This podcast is called Qualified Immunity, where we take on controversial issues every day for fun.
I thought you had forgotten to mention that. So I was going to jump in.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you did it.
Do you know all the platforms it's on?
No.
Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Anchor, Overcast, and 9 more. That's just the ones I remember. You left me in charge of it.
Yeah, it's a good thing you're doing this because I couldn't.
You should try dealing with the analytics of all of them at the same time.
Nope, not me.
I do more tech before 9 a.m. than you do before all day.
Probably all week.
Like, legitimately, I'm doing so much crap before 9 a.m. just with this podcast, and then I go to work, and it's all internet-based. Yeah. Any closing thoughts?
No, not really.
Okay. In that case, we're going to end this way. We're going to end this episode the way we end every episode, with my favorite quote from my favorite music festival in the entire world. Live today, love tomorrow, and unite forever. Till Valhalla, guys.